passes quickly. It flies by. You're home away from home. Radio nostalgia from Mars.
Life passes quickly indeed. Another blast from the past, reminding us to savor each moment as it flies by. Speaking of savoring things, the Health and Well-being Department would like us to remind you that the popping and fizzing noise your dried food makes when you're adding water is perfectly normal and does not mean it has gone off or is contaminated. The Health and Wellbeing Department would also like to take this moment to remind you to take your bone density pills twice a week now, as it was discovered the original dose is off by a factor of 2. Right, on with the show. Music and dancing have always been a mainstay of stress relief and letting go. Our next caller, Merva, recalls her teenage clubbing days with vivid memories of awkward first kisses and a life-altering club experience invoking a philosophical epiphany.
Stories, memories, the good old days, original sources, authentic to you, hope, inspiration, drama, radio nostalgia from Mars.
So, when I was a kid in Vienna, in high school, we used to learn all the German poets, like best friends, Goethe and Schiller. But the first poet that actually spoke to me was Heinrich Heine. I knew a couple of Heine's poems by heart that are now buried somewhere deep in my mind. But one passage about burning books stuck with me. Yes, even till today. So, just to fast forward to college, just a couple of years before the Great Catastrophe, I was walking around Berlin with a group of friends coming from a house party. I still remember that apartment smelling of potatoes. Yes, because we always made pommes and drank schnapps before heading out. Yeah. And after that, I remember passing by Alexanderplatz on that very, very hot night. And next to me was a guy I liked. We kissed before, but I can't say I really remember that. Probably from all the drinking, or maybe he was just a bad kisser. But I can still feel this sticky, sweaty, and very ambivalent feeling of us holding hands. Yeah, anyways, we popped some pills and entered our techno church that, well, now when I think back, I visited more often than my college. And I remember the beat in my chest and all these young bodies moving in this industrial space. I used to love dancing and counting beats in techno songs, but one song was very strange. It just went repetition, and then this female vocal would creep out of nowhere. And then suddenly I felt very dizzy, so I sat on the ground and held my knees closely to my chest. It was some sort of like protective instinct. I was like an animal. And I felt cold sweat dripping down my neck. Ugh. And I'm sure my guy thought I was completely crazy. And then out of nowhere, the Heine lines clearly came to me. I sat there motionless, surrounded by the ugly, hypnotic, delirious atmosphere. And no effort to recall Heine's lines. They were just there, planted in my head. Wilde, düstere Zeiten dröhnen heran und der Prophet, der eine neue Apokalypse schreiben wollte, musste ganz neue Bestien erfinden. Und zwar so erschreckliche, dass die älteren johannischen Tiersymbole dagegen nur sanfte Täubchen und Amoretten wären. Die Götter verhüllen ihr Antlitz aus Mitleid mit den Menschenkindern, ihren langjährigen Pfleglingen und vielleicht zugleich auch aus Besorgnis über das eigene Schicksal. And yeah, 2 years later, I ended up here, on Mars.
A does bring back memories of university days and sweaty club nights. Earthly hedonism at its finest. For the record, corporate does not endorse or advocate the use of psychedelic drugs, and reminds you, dear listeners, that Class A drugs are just as illegal here on Mars as they were on Earth. Okay, disclaimer out of the way, we actually have a surprise for Mirva. We tracked down that weird song in her head and dug it out of the archives for all to hear. Grab a tube of OMAS and enjoy the ride while sipping on pure calm.
The deepest tunes, the warmest memories. Radio nostalgia from Mars.
Repetition, 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 repetition,
Listen to the Game est un podcast produit par Podcut. Vous pouvez retrouver l'ensemble des podcasts du label sur podcut.studio. Et si vous avez l'âme et le porte-monnaie d'un mécène, un Patreon est aussi là pour les soutenir. Vous pouvez aussi retrouver le podcast sur Twitter @LTTG podcast ou sur Facebook. Je rappelle qu'une présentation globale du concept est disponible en épisode 0. Merci de votre écoute et à très vite.
Hey! Listen!